Well, the EV transition might not be going as smoothly as initially anticipated, with OEMs continuing to offer a plethora of powertrains and no all-EV automotive industry really in sight. There still are quite a few really unique offerings now on the table, and this vehicle beside me is one of them. This is the fully electric 2025 Cadillac Escalade IQ. That's right, we now live in a world where you can get an all-electric Cadillac Escalade. It is not a settled vehicle in any of its figures, so let's dive into this 2025 Cadillac Escalade IQ. All right, I'm gonna start by trying to go through all the specs of this vehicle, and it starts with the fact that this Escalade IQ is longer than the standard gas Cadillac Escalade, and it might not look like that just looking at the side profile of this vehicle, and I think that's because your proportions are all thrown off because these are 24-inch rims wrapped in 35-inch tires. So this wheel well is absolutely colossal. So yes, this vehicle is closer in size to an Escalade ESV than the standard wheelbase gas Escalade, and they are actually making a long version of this vehicle. Not long wheelbase, the wheelbase stays the same, but they tack on 4 extra inches to the back of this vehicle. And also you can see we have a very sloping silhouette back here, not very Escalade-esque in the side profile and the roofline of the back of this vehicle, but the Escalade IQ-L has a much squarer side profile, and that is where you're going to get some extra rear seat headroom, third row headroom, and more cargo space behind the third row. But okay, back to specs. 750 horsepower and 785 pound-feet of torque in Velocity Max mode, which is, this is an all-wheel drive dual motor setup no matter what. 460 miles of range, as I mentioned, out of the 205 kilowatt hour battery pack, which is absolutely colossal. This vehicle weighs 9,000 pounds. If you get the executive rear seat and start tacking on some other options, 9,200 pounds is about what this vehicle maxes out at, and the IQ-L starts at about 9,200 pounds. So this is no light vehicle, but Cadillac has done a great job masking this with rear wheel steering. This has Cadillac's arrival mode, which is the same thing as GMC's crab walk feature, where it can turn the back wheels in the same direction as the front, and the car will drive forward horizontally. It's so powerful with 750 horsepower. So 0 to 60 in 4.7 seconds masks a lot of this car's weight. And overall, this is such a serene and luxurious driving experience, which we'll get into more, that really makes you forget that you're driving such a heavy vehicle. But let's dive into a little more about this car. I want to spend a minute talking about the design of this vehicle. When I first saw it, like almost 2 years ago now, I was a little hesitant, especially because of this sloping rear roofline. It doesn't necessarily give Escalade, but what they have achieved in terms of the design and an Escalade is the presence. This has Escalade presence to it. It's so large, it's so massive. I think it looks really good all blacked out. The early models that we saw were only like silver. And I think there are some things you can do to make the car look a bit better. I don't really like the wheels on this particular model. They're kind of an aero rim cover. They have some more like aggressive or standard looking wheels that I think kind of fit the Escalade ethos a bit better. And the IQ-L is a much boxier, more traditional Escalade shape. Cadillac says that the Escalade IQ-L is what they expect most current Escalade customers to gravitate towards because it's a bit more familiar design-wise. And they expect this Escalade IQ, the non-long one, to be more of a conquest vehicle, bringing in new customers to the brand, maybe from Range Rover, maybe from other luxury models, which I kind of see this is definitely more of a fashion piece, and the IQ-L is more of a utilitarian vehicle, still very luxurious and very expensive. But there's actually not that much price difference between the two. It's about $3,000, which when you're talking about a $127,000 vehicle, because that's the starting price of this car, that isn't that much. So I think a lot of people are going to be choosing between IQ and IQ-L solely based on their preferred design preference. For me, it would be IQ-L, but I don't absolutely hate this IQ. It's starting to grow on me. Now, actually, my least favorite part of the design of this vehicle is the front end. It's a little too busy to me. There's lines going this way, lines going that way, and then these horizontal lines. There's no like kind of signature front end. I mean, there is a signature, but it doesn't give Cadillac Escalade. I actually think the Cadillac Vistic, which is Cadillac's 3-row midsize electric SUV that they have coming out next year, has a bit more of a traditional Cadillac grille and a bit bolder and just simpler in the way that it is massive. I prefer that look to this. Part of it is the cut out for the E-trunk, which I'll talk about in a minute. That just kind of gives it a weird shape. I think all of GM's full-size SUVs or trucks that ride on this platform, aside from the Hummer, kind of have this weird look. Sierra EV, Denali, Silverado EV. So I'm not fully sold by this. It doesn't bug me too much, but yeah, this design element is just a bit too busy. But I can open the E-trunk, which is Cadillac's name for the front trunk, and it will raise up kind of slowly, but it's quite capacious. 12.2 cubic feet, and you can push it up a little more, which is plenty of space. I can like fully sit with my legs extended. It's pretty spacious in here. But yeah, the front end design isn't my favorite, but nice that they really did utilize their EV platform to give you some more cargo space, because there isn't that much space in the third row or behind the third row. And IQL actually doesn't really provide much more space behind the third row. IQL prioritizes third row legroom over the standard IQ, 4 more inches of third row legroom, 1 more inch of third row headroom in the back of the IQL compared to the regular Escalade IQ. But there's minimally more cargo space behind the third row. You get the boxier silhouette, which is nice for stacking things, but the depth is like 0.2 inches longer in IQL than Escalade IQ. So I'm a little disappointed that they don't offer basically what they offer in the ESV, which is enough space for all 3 rows of passengers. That's not really on offer. Like, you do have this space, which is nice, but I wish there was a little more cargo capacity behind the third row. And before I show you the rear cargo area, one thing to note is that you still press the emblem in order to open the tailgate, but on the gas Escalade, you actually like physically press it in and you like fully know that you have done something in order to open the tailgate. This one, you more just kind of tap with some force and then it opens. The emblem itself doesn't move. It's a little weird, but then we're going to find 23.6 cubic feet of storage behind the third row, which isn't massive compared to a gas Escalade ESV. And on the IQL, again, it's not going to offer that much more storage, just 0.2 inches more depth and a little more practicality with the boxier silhouette. Another feature I want to highlight on the Escalade IQ are the automatic doors that are available. So on the Sport 2 and Luxury 2 trim levels, they come standard. They are not available on the Sport 1 or Luxury 1 trim levels. And honestly, I don't know if I would get them or get those trim levels with these doors. They're a little finicky sometimes, but this is how they're supposed to work. So you can put your hand on the inside and pull on this little button. The door will swing open. You get to decide how much opening it swings, like you get to determine the level. And to close it, you can just pull on this little lever on the inside or press that same button again on the outside and the door will swing closed. There's also screens on the inside where you can control to open and close the doors as well. And as the driver, when you put your foot on the brake, it also will close your door automatically. Again, they're kind of annoying because if I just tried to open this door, it gives me some resistance. It tries to know what I want, but it doesn't. And then it's just kind of heavy because it has some electric assists to it, but there's an initial hurdle that there's an initial amount of force you have to give the door before it starts assisting you, and it's just kind of weird and jarring, and most people aren't going to know, most people aren't going to know what to do with these doors. I kind of find them annoying, but there you have it. All right, hopping into the second row of Escalade IQ. It's actually an absolutely brutal day outside, so I'm going to use the screen in the center of the back to close the door, and that automatic closing door is nice, although it's not the most practical. Wow, look at the seat in front of me even moved up a little bit. It's not the most practical, as I'll talk about in a bit, but sitting here in the second row, I can slide my seat back. This does not have the executive second row package, so these are kind of standard second row seats for a regular Escalade, pretty familiar. So they slide and recline, and they are captain's chairs, which is nice, but I definitely have plenty of room back here, plenty of knee room, foot room, and headroom, even with this panoramic sunroof and the cutout for it. I, at 6'2", still do fit. This chair is adjusted to about my ideal driving position, and I have lots of space. And this is the shorter of the two Escalade IQs on offer. There's also an Escalade IQ-L, but the biggest difference you're going to notice in terms of passenger space on the L is in the third row. We also have these nice displays on the back of the front seats, which is nice to see, although I bet most people won't be using them because you'll just use like an iPad or whatever. And we have this pretty massive screen on the back of the center console to adjust our climate control zone. We have 4-zone climate controls right now. We can also adjust like where the air is flowing and some of our ambient lighting, and again, our door controls, which is cool. So if I wanted to open this door right here, I would slide this. Okay, now let's climb into the third row. I'm gonna recline this seat so that you can see, or actually I'll just push it out of the way. There, into the third row. So I fit quite easily in the second row. And here in the third row, space is a little tighter. My knees are pressed up against this seat. I could move this seat up and still fit in the second row. But in terms of headroom, I do fit even with the sloping roofline of this vehicle. So it's a very usable space. But again, the IQL with its boxier silhouette and longer overall length, that's where you're going to notice the biggest difference, because that car has 4 more inches of third row legroom and 1 more inch of third row headroom. Definitely a bit more usable. All right, sitting in the front of the 2025 Escalade IQ, the first thing you're gonna notice is this massive pillar-to-pillar 55-inch display. It's actually 2 displays. There's one from the A-pillar to the passenger side of the center of the vehicle, and then a secondary screen that is for the front passenger. That does things like you can watch movies, you can show stats about the vehicle, like how fast you're going, your fuel consumption or your electricity consumption in this Escalade IQ. And when you put the car in drive, if there's anything displayed on that screen, it becomes invisible to the driver, which is really cool to see. You know, you obviously don't want to get distracted by someone's Hulu or YouTube watching while you're driving a vehicle. And the rest of this infotainment system is fine. It's very similar to GM's typical infotainment systems. And as this is an electric GM, it does not feature Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, which is definitely disappointing to hear about in a $130,000 vehicle, because that is the starting price of this Escalade IQ. But other than that, I think the materials and everything is very nice in here. There's definitely a lot of gloss black, like in the center console. There's all touch controls too. Your climate controls are all touch controls, although I do appreciate that it is a secondary screen versus being integrated into the main infotainment system. And your steering wheel is very elegant looking. I am a fan of the design of this. They are touch sensitive gloss black controls though, so again, not the biggest fan of that. But I think the overall design is beautiful. A lot of high quality materials, very commanding driving position. You're sitting on top of this like massive, super heavy vehicle, and you definitely get that with this seating position. And it's also so quiet in here. When you shut the doors, it's pretty windy and rainy and loud outside right now, but when you shut the doors, you hear the rain bouncing off the glass roof, but other than that, it's really serene in here. So now let's get this car out on the road and see how it drives. All right, driving the 2025 Cadillac Escalade IQ. This really is the first full-size electric SUV on the market. The vehicles like the Rivian R1S, Tesla Model X, Volvo EX90, those are 3-row midsize in the US. So this is definitely a step up in terms of size, and it's kind of impressive that we have reached this point in the EV revolution, if you want to call it that we can have vehicles this big that are also electric. And sitting here behind the wheel, I can confirm, Super Cruise is on, by the way, that's why I can take my hands off the wheel, but I can confirm that this drives like an Escalade. This is a very comfortable, quiet driving experience. This is based on, you know, GM's formerly named Ultium platform, now GM EV battery or whatever, but shares a lot of stuff with Hummer, with Silverado EV, and with Sierra EV, but this definitely feels more premium in here. I think the ride is improved, and it's definitely a bit quieter in here. I'm currently getting a massage. The materials and everything are quite beautiful. And I have to say, I'm pretty impressed. I was a little not worried about this vehicle, but I didn't love a lot of the driving characteristics of Silverado EV in particular. When you know, these are big, heavy vehicles with air suspension. When you floor it, when you slam on the brakes, there's a lot of pitch and dive, and you're still gonna get some of that in this vehicle, but I think the ethos of the Escalade is much more luxury oriented. And so I think this setup really works with Escalade. It's so effortlessly smooth, obviously, because it's an electric vehicle, and so quiet. There's no gas engine in here. So in terms of power for this insanely large SUV, what are we working with? Well, in the standard drive modes, this car produces 680 horsepower and 615 pound-feet of torque, and that is really, really close to the power output of the Cadillac Escalade V with its 6.2 liter supercharged V8. That vehicle makes 682 horsepower. Now, that car is lighter than this, which is insane to think that an Escalade can be lighter than anything, but the gas Escalade is definitely lighter than the electric Escalade, so that car is a bit quicker. And when we enter the Velocity Max mode, we are going to get 750 horsepower and 785 pound-feet of torque. So this is by far the most powerful Cadillac Escalade on sale and most powerful Cadillac ever made. Although this is still not quite as quick as the Cadillac Escalade V. V does it in 4.4 seconds, 0 to 60 in 4.4 seconds. This does 0 to 60 in 4.7 seconds, so just a tad slower. And as with all General Motors electric vehicles, you do not get all of that torque instantly. You know, EVs are known for their instant torque. So 784 pound-feet of torque to the wheel right away would be a lot on a 9,000 pound vehicle. So I think for the motors, for the longevity of the motors and the tires, they don't give you all that power right away. So when you floor it, there's definitely a ramp up in power, a little more linear, a little more analogous to a gas vehicle, not what you would expect if you've driven a lot of EVs, but it's still plenty quick for this large of a vehicle. Frankly, you wouldn't want it to go faster because you are captaining so much mass down the road. You have so much momentum behind you that it's a little scary at times. But I think Cadillac overall has done a good job. I'm gonna build up a little gap between me and the car in front of me. I am in Velocity Max. We're going 55 miles an hour. If I floor it, definitely a kick, and then it ramps up a little bit. I'm gonna turn off VMAX now and do the same thing, build up a little gap between the car in front of me, and now floor it again. Felt pretty similar. I think there was a bit more of a, not violence, but it was a little more aggressive in Velocity Max mode. But yeah, overall, no matter what, this car is plenty quick. And in terms of other driving dynamics, Super Cruise, incredible. These seats are super comfortable. Love the massage I'm getting right now. Materials are all really nice. Very quiet in here. If you get the level 2 trim levels of this vehicle, so Luxury 2 or Sport 2, you get a 38 speaker AKG audio system, which is really impressive. If you get the Executive Second Row package, which this model doesn't have, that bumps it up to a 42 speaker system, which is even more insane. We drove Cadillac Optic yesterday, which is Cadillac's entry-level electric vehicle. That comes with Dolby Atmos integration, which is a really impressive 3D surround system. That is not available on the 2025 Cadillac Escalade IQ. 2026 models will have it, so Escalade IQ and the IQL, which is slightly longer. Another fun tidbit we kind of got from the Cadillac comms team is that the Escalade IQL, it has the same rated range as the Escalade IQ, even though it is less aerodynamic because it's boxier. It has less of a sloping rear end. They're still saying that vehicle gets 460 miles, and when asked about that, Cadillac said, well, that is a 2026 model year. We have not released the range for the 2026 model year Escalade IQ. So I believe that means they're going to be making a few changes, either to the software, to maybe some of the batteries, in order to eke out a little more range of this Escalade IQ to increase it from 460 miles, which is pretty impressive. That they think they can get a little more out of this. Sitting here again, we are surrounded by screens, and to me, a screen is not really luxurious, and I do think Cadillac has taken the screen side of this interior a bit too far. All of your climate controls are controlled through a touchscreen, which is down lower. We have a 55-inch pillar-to-pillar display, a passenger display, and a infotainment system and instrument cluster. You know, in 5-10 years, I don't think this system is going to age well, and there's not much craftsmanship that can be done with a screen. It's all just, anyone can put a screen in a car. You can put a screen in, you know, a Nissan has a big screen these days. So this larger infotainment system doesn't necessarily do it for me on a luxury front. Thankfully, I think all the other elements of this interior are super luxurious, like these seats, like the door panels, the materials they've chosen. Not a fan of that. Also, in these 55 inches of screens they've put on the dash of this car, they weren't able to make room for Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Right now, I have decided to go on a slightly different route than Cadillac has provided for us on this drive program, and I have my phone navigating us in the cup holder right here because, or in the wireless charging pad, because I can't just project it onto the screen. I could have typed the destination into this Google-based system, but not as seamless of an integration. And that's a little disappointing on a $130,000 vehicle. This IQ starts at about $127,000, that we don't get Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. And that's just this case for all General Motors electric vehicles. I hope that changes in the future, but know that if you're looking at this vehicle, you don't get those pretty simple features that a lot of other vehicles, and the gas Escalade, which has the same exact 55-inch display, the gas Escalade does have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. So my overall takeaway for the driving impressions of this car are very, very high. And I actually had the chance to ride shotgun in a gas Escalade just after driving this vehicle for a little bit. And I find the seats and the suspension of the Escalade IQ a bit more comfortable than the seats and the suspension of the gas Escalade. Both of them now ride on 24s. This obviously has a unique suspension. This has 35-inch tires, so a lot more sidewall as well than the gas Escalade, which I think really helps the ride. But this is a super, super comfortable vehicle, which is super impressive for such a large car. You have an insanely large range, an insanely spacious cabin, and this really is a full-size electric luxury SUV. Very impressed by what Cadillac has done, and I think this vehicle is going to perform well for them. It definitely takes the Cadillac luxury experience to the next level. I think they went a little too much on the screens, but overall that doesn't detract too much from this vehicle, and I still think it is a genuinely luxurious car and one that is super, super impressive. So that's the 2025 Cadillac Escalade IQ. I'm actually really, really impressed with this vehicle. You know, it rides really good, even though it weighs 9,000 pounds and has 24-inch rims. It's crazy fast, it's crazy quiet in there too, and it has bonkers range and so many amenities and luxuries. Now, it is really expensive as well, $127,000, basically $130,000 after destination and handling. So it's about 50 grand more than the competition from Lucid and about 55 grand more than the competition from Rivian, or the starting prices of those cars. It's definitely asking a pretty penny, but it's also delivering a lot of product. Really, my only complaint with this car is that it doesn't have Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. If it had those things, it would be a nearly perfect full-size luxury electric SUV. Good job, Cadillac. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in my next video.